Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra's Hope, watching the stars through the large front window. His coffee cup steamed in his hands as he looked at the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Strange things were happening, and nobody could explain why. "Captain, we're getting another distress call," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her station. She turned around in her chair, her face worried. "This one is from the Catherian Empire." Jake raised his eyebrows. The Catherians were one of the oldest races in the galaxy. They had technology that seemed like magic to humans. Their cities were made of living crystal that grew from the ground. Their ships could travel between stars in minutes. They had never asked anyone for help before. What kind of distress? Jake asked, walking over to Amy's station. "They say their technology is failing. Power grids are shutting down. Ships are losing power in space. They don't know what's causing it." Amy's voice was quiet. "Captain, they sound scared." "Dr. Lisa." Kane looked up from her science station. She was the ship's expert on alien life and had worked with many different species. "The Catherians don't get scared, Jake. If they're asking for help, something very bad is happening." Commander Alex Rodriguez stepped forward from his spot near the weapons controls. He was a military man who had fought in the border wars before. Humanity joined the Galactic Council. Could be a trap. Maybe they want to test our defenses. "No," Lisa shook her head. "I've worked with them before. They're proud, but they're not liars. If they say they need help, they really need help." Jake set down his coffee cup and walked to the captain's chair. The Terra's Hope was not the biggest human ship, but it was fast and had good sensors. More importantly, it had a crew that Jake trusted with his life. "Amy, set course for the Catherian homeworld. Best speed we can manage." Jake sat down and pressed the ship-wide communication button. "All hands, this is the captain. We're responding to a distress call from the Catherian Empire. Everyone stay sharp and be ready for anything." The journey to the Catherian homeworld took 6 hours at maximum warp speed. During the trip, more reports came in from across the galaxy. The Nexari Republic's computer networks were crashing. The Verdani Collective's living ships were dying in space. Even the energy beings called the Astral Dominion were having problems. "It's spreading," Lisa said, looking at the data on her screen. "Whatever is happening, it's affecting every major civilization in the galaxy. Except us," Alex pointed out. "All human ships and colonies are reporting normal operations." Jake frowned. That was strange. Humans were the newest members of the Galactic Council. Their technology was considered primitive by galactic standards. While other races had energy weapons and ships that could bend space, humans still used chemical rockets and metal bullets. Other species often made jokes about human technology being so basic. "Maybe that's why we're not affected," Lisa said quietly. "Maybe whatever is causing this doesn't work on our technology, because it's too simple." The Terra's Hope dropped out of warp speed near the Catherian homeworld. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go silent. The planet below them was going dark. Huge crystal cities that normally glowed with beautiful light were now dim and gray. Ships hung dead in space around the planet. Some were slowly falling toward the surface, their engines completely dead. "My God," Amy whispered. Jake had visited this world before when humanity first joined the Galactic Council. It had been the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Crystal towers reached up into the sky like frozen music. Light flowed through the buildings like water. The whole planet had seemed alive with energy and purpose. Now it looked like it was dying. "Captain, we're getting a communication from the surface," the communication officer reported. "Put it on screen." The face that appeared was that of High Counselor Zexthara, one of the most important Catherians in their government. Jake had met her before. She was tall and thin, with skin that looked like it was made of blue crystal. Her people usually spoke in calm, proud voices that showed they thought they were better than everyone else. But now she looked desperate. Her crystal skin was dim instead of bright. Her large eyes were wide with fear. "Captain Morrison," she said, her voice shaking. "Thank you for coming. We need your help." Those words hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. He had never heard a Catherian ask for help before. They were always the ones giving advice and looking down on younger races. "What can we do for?" "You, High Counselor?" Jake asked. "Our cities are losing power. Our ships cannot fly. Our computers are shutting down one by one. We have tried everything we know, but nothing works. Our greatest minds cannot find the cause." She paused, and Jake could see how hard it was for her to say the next words. "We are hoping that your different technology might be able to help us." She said different technology in a way that meant she wanted to say primitive technology, but was too polite to say it out loud. "We'll do whatever we can," Jake promised. "Can you tell us more about what's happening?" "The failures started 3 days ago in our outer colonies. Power systems that have worked for thousands of years simply stopped. Our energy-based technology is completely useless. The failure is spreading toward our core worlds. At this rate, our entire civilization will be powerless within a week." Lisa leaned forward. "High Counselor, are any of your non-energy technologies still working? Anything mechanical or chemical?" Zexthara looked confused. We stopped using such primitive methods long ago. Everything in our society runs on pure energy manipulation. We saw no need for crude physical systems." Alex and Jake looked at each other. Every human ship and station was full of crude physical systems. Backup generators, mechanical tools, chemical batteries. Things that other races laughed at. "High Counselor, we'd like to send a team down to your surface to help figure out what's going on. Can you guarantee their safety?" "Of course. We will provide you with whatever help we can. But Captain ... Her voice got even quieter. "Please hurry. Our people are starting to panic. We have never been helpless before." The communication ended, and the bridge was quiet for a moment. "Well," Alex said finally, "looks like our primitive technology might not be so useless after all." Jake nodded, already planning their next move. Something was attacking the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, but it wasn't affecting humans. That meant humanity might be the only hope for billions of beings across the stars. He looked out at the darkening planet below and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The galaxy's youngest race was about to become its most important. Chief Engineer Sam Parker wiped grease from his hands as he climbed out of the Terra's Hope's engine room. He had been working for 6 hours straight, checking every system on the ship. Everything was running perfectly. The nuclear reactor hummed. Quietly, the chemical thrusters responded normally, and all the mechanical systems worked just like they should. It was strange. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy about massive technology failures, but human technology worked fine. Sam had been an engineer for 20 years, and he had never seen anything like this. "Sam, get up to the bridge." Captain Morrison's voice came through the ship's communication system. "We need you here." Sam took the elevator up to the bridge and found everyone gathered around the main display screen. The news was not good. "It's spreading faster than we thought," Dr. Lisa Kane said, pointing at a map of the galaxy. Red dots showed where civilizations were reporting technology failures. The Nexari Republic lost their entire AI network 3 hours ago. Their ships are floating dead in space. "What about the Verdani?" Sam asked. The Verdani were famous for their biotechnology. Their ships were actually living creatures that could heal themselves and grow new parts. "Dead," Commander Alex Rodriguez said grimly. "All of them." Their living ships just stopped working and died. Billions of Verdani are stuck on planets with no way to travel between stars. Captain Morrison turned to Sam. I need you to explain something to me. Why is our technology still working when everyone else's is failing? Sam thought about it for a moment. Well, sir, most alien technology uses what they call exotic physics. Energy manipulation, quantum fields, space-time bending. Really advanced stuff that we barely understand. And our technology? Basic physics. Chemical reactions, nuclear fission, mechanical movement. The same principles we've used for hundreds of years, Sam shrugged. They always called it primitive, but it works. The communication system beeped, and Amy Foster answered it. Captain, we're getting a priority message from Ambassador Helen Wright on the Galactic Council station. Put her through. Ambassador Wright's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired and worried. Behind her, Sam could see other diplomats from different species talking in panicked voices. Jake, thank God you're still operating, she said. The situation here is chaos. The station's main power grid failed an hour ago. We're running on emergency backup systems, but those are failing too. How many species are affected? Captain Morrison asked. All of them except us. The Cytherians, the Nexari, the Verdani, the Astral Dominion, everyone. They're most advanced. Technology just stops working. But our backup generators, our chemical batteries, our mechanical systems, they all work fine. Through the screen, they could see a tall alien with 4 arms and gray skin approach the ambassador. Sam recognized him as Council Leader Vorth from the Nexari Republic. Ambassador Wright, Vorth said, his voice full of desperation. My people need help. Our AI systems controlled everything. Food distribution, transportation, communication. Without them, billions will die within days. We'll do what we can, Helen said. But we need to understand what's happening first. Another alien appeared, this one short and covered in green scales. It was Representative Kala from the Verdani Collective. Our bioships are all dead. We have colonies on 40 worlds with no way to supply them. They will starve without help. Sam watched as more and more alien representatives crowded around Ambassador Wright. These were beings from civilizations that were millions of years old. They had technology that could destroy stars or create new life forms. They had always looked down on humans as young and primitive. Now they were begging for help. Ambassador, Captain Morrison said, what do you need from us? Everything, Jake. We're the only ones with working ships. The Council is asking, no. They're begging for humanity to coordinate relief efforts across the galaxy. The captain was quiet for a moment. Sam could see him thinking about what this meant. Humanity had fewer than 1,000 ships in space. There were trillions of beings across the galaxy who might need help. Tell the Council we'll do whatever we can, Jake finally said. But we'll need their help to understand what's causing this. There's something else, Helen said quietly. We're not meeting in the Council chambers anymore. The entire station's advanced technology is failing. We had to move to the cargo bay of a human freighter. It's the only safe place left. Sam felt a chill run down his spine. The Galactic Council had met in the same chamber for over 50,000 years. It was a symbol of peace and cooperation between all the species in the galaxy. Now they were meeting in the back of a human cargo ship. Ambassador, I need you to gather all the alien scientists you can find, Dr. Kane said. Have them bring whatever data they have about the failures. Maybe we can figure out what's causing this. Already working on it, Lisa, but most of their data is stored in systems that don't work anymore. We're having to go back to written records and basic mathematics. The communication ended, and the bridge was quiet for a moment. Captain, Amy said, we're getting distress calls from 17 different star systems. The requests are coming in faster than I can read them. What kind of requests? Medical supplies, food, transport for stranded populations. One Cytherian colony is asking for help with basic electrical power. They say they've forgotten how to generate electricity without their energy manipulation technology. Commander Rodriguez shook his head. How do you forget how to make electricity when you've been using pure energy control for 10,000 years? You don't need to remember the basics, Sam explained. It would be like us forgetting how to make fire because we have electric heaters. Captain Morrison stood up and walked to the front window. Outside, space looked normal, but Sam knew that across the galaxy, billions of beings were sitting in the dark, waiting for help. Sam, I need you to contact every human ship and station you can reach. Tell them to prepare for the biggest rescue operation in galactic history. Yes, sir. What should I tell them to prepare for? Jake turned around, and Sam could see the determination in his eyes. Tell them that humanity is about to become the most important species in the galaxy. And tell them we're not going to let anyone down. Over the next few hours, reports continued to pour in. The technology plague was spreading to every corner of the galaxy. Civilizations that had ruled the stars for millions of years were falling into darkness one by one. But in that darkness, human ships were like bright lights, moving from system to system, carrying hope and help to anyone who needed it. The galaxy's youngest and most primitive race had become its only beacon of hope. Sam worked through the night, coordinating with human engineers across known space. They were about to attempt something that had never been done before, rebuilding galactic civilization from the ground up, using nothing but human technology and determination. As he worked, Sam couldn't help but smile. For years, aliens had made jokes about human engineering being too simple and crude. Now that same simple, crude technology was going to save them all. Dr. Rick Chun stared at the data on his computer screen for the 10th time that morning. The numbers didn't make sense, but they were consistent across every report from the galaxy. He rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of coffee. This isn't random, he said to himself. There's a pattern here. Rick was a physicist who studied the basic forces that held the universe together. While other human scientists focused on building bigger ships or better weapons, Rick liked to understand why things worked the way they did. His colleagues sometimes called him crazy, but his crazy ideas had solved problems before. Captain Morrison walked into the science lab where Rick was working. The Terra's Hope was now the command center for human relief operations across 3-star systems. Ships came and went constantly, carrying supplies to dying worlds. Rick, please tell me you have good news, Jake said, sitting down across from the scientist. I have news. Whether it's good or bad depends on how you look at it. Rick turned his computer screen toward the captain. I've been studying the technology failures across the galaxy. They're not random failures. What do you mean? Look at this pattern. Every civilization that uses exotic physics, energy manipulation, quantum field technology, space-time bending, they all failed at exactly the same rate. But civilizations that still used some basic physics alongside their advanced technology took longer to fail. Jake frowned. So it's attacking advanced technology specifically? More than that. It's like something is actively hunting down and destroying any technology that goes beyond basic physical laws. Rick pulled up another screen full of data. I think we're dealing with a weapon. A weapon? Who would build something like this? Before Rick could answer, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Captain Morrison to the bridge immediately. We have an emergency. Jake and Rick rushed to the bridge, where they found everyone gathered around Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell. She had just returned from a scouting mission to the outer rim of the galaxy. Sarah, what did you find out there? Jake asked. Sarah was one of humanity's best pilots. She flew a small, fast scout ship that could travel between star systems quicker than any other human vessel. Her ship was basic even by human standards, just a chemical rocket engine, basic life support, and simple navigation equipment. "Captain, I found something strange in the void sector," she said, catching her breath. "There are structures out there, ancient structures that I've never seen before." She activated the main display screen and showed images from her scouting trip. The pictures showed massive geometric shapes floating in empty space. They were made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light. "How big are these things?" Dr. Kane asked. "Each one is about the size of a moon," Sarah replied. "And there are hundreds of them, all arranged in perfect patterns. They're definitely artificial." Rick studied the images carefully. "Sarah, did your ship's instruments detect any energy signatures from these structures?" "That's the weird part. My basic sensors couldn't detect anything unusual. No energy readings, no electromagnetic signatures, nothing. It's like they're not there, except I can see them with my own eyes." "Wait," Rick said, his voice getting excited. "Your basic sensors couldn't detect them, but you could see them?" "Yeah. My ship's simple optical cameras picked them up fine, but all the electronic detection systems showed nothing." Rick jumped up from his chair. "That's it. That's the answer." Everyone looked at him like he had lost his mind. "Don't you see? These structures are using the same principle as the weapon that's destroying galactic technology. They exist in a way that advanced sensors can't detect them, but basic physical observation can." Dr. Kane leaned forward. "Rick, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that whoever built these structures also built the weapon that's destroying the galaxy. And I think I know why our technology isn't affected." Rick walked to the front of the bridge and faced everyone. "The weapon targets anything that uses exotic physics, energy manipulation, quantum fields, space-time technology, all the things that advanced civilizations use. But our technology uses basic physics," Jake said, understanding dawning in his voice. "Exactly. Chemical reactions, nuclear fusion, mechanical movement, electromagnetic radiation, all basic physical forces that have existed since the universe began. The weapon doesn't recognize them as threats because they're too simple." Commander Rodriguez crossed his arms. "So you're telling me that our primitive technology is actually protecting us from this weapon? More than protecting us. Our technology is invisible to whatever is causing this plague." Rick turned back to Sarah. "That's why your scout ship could get close to those structures without being detected. To them, you're just another piece of space debris." Captain Morrison was quiet for a moment, thinking through the implications. "If you're right, then we have a huge advantage. We can go places and do things that the weapon can't stop." "But Captain," Amy Foster said from her station, "if these structures are the source of the weapon, what can we do about it?" "We're just one ship." "We're not just one ship anymore," Jake replied. "We're the only ships that can function properly in the entire galaxy. Every human vessel is now a beacon of hope for billions of beings." Sarah stepped forward. "Captain, I want to go back out there. If we can learn more about these structures, maybe we can find a way to stop the weapon." "Too dangerous," Alex said immediately. "We don't know what those things are capable of." "But we know they can't detect me," Sarah argued. "My ship is too primitive for their sensors. I could get close enough to gather real intelligence." Rick nodded enthusiastically. "She's right. A basic scout ship with simple cameras and mechanical instruments could learn things that no advanced civilization could discover." Dr. Kane looked worried. "But what if you're wrong? What if the weapon can affect our technology too? Then we're all doomed anyway," Rick said simply. "But I don't think I'm wrong. The evidence is too clear. This weapon was designed to target advanced civilizations and force them back to a primitive technological level. Jake walked to the front window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were sitting in darkness, waiting for help. Human ships were scattered across the galaxy, serving as the only source of light and hope. Sarah, prepare your ship for another scouting mission. But this time, you're not going alone. He turned back to his crew. We're going to take the Terra's Hope into the Void Sector. If there are answers out there, we're going to find them. Captain, Amy said quietly, what if we find more than we bargained for? Jake smiled grimly. Then we'll deal with it the human way. With determination, creativity, and technology that's too stubborn to quit working. As the Terra's Hope prepared to head into the unknown, its simple LED navigation lights cut through the darkness of space. Those lights were nothing special, just basic electricity flowing through simple circuits. But in a galaxy where all the advanced technology had failed, those simple lights had become the most important things in the universe. They were humanity's flashlight in the cosmic dark, and they were about to illuminate secrets that had been hidden for millions of years. Colonel Ben Turner stood in the middle of what used to be the most advanced spaceport in the galaxy. 6 months ago, the Nexari Central Hub had been a marvel of technology. Ships arrived and departed using artificial intelligence systems. Cargo was moved by machines that thought for themselves. Everything ran perfectly without any need for manual control. Now, it was silent and dark. Ben led a team of 50 human engineers who were working to rebuild the spaceport using basic human technology. It was slow work, but it was the only way to get supply ships moving again between the Nexari worlds. Colonel, we've got the first landing pad working, reported Sergeant Mike Johnson, wiping sweat from his forehead. Basic radio communication, chemical-powered landing lights, and mechanical guidance systems. Ben nodded and made a note on his clipboard. Yes, an actual clipboard with paper and a pencil. It was the most reliable way to keep track of their progress when all the electronic systems were dead. What about the cargo loading systems? Ben asked. We're installing mechanical cranes and conveyor belts. Old-fashioned stuff, but it works. Should have the first bay operational by tomorrow. A tall, thin Nexari approached them. Her name was Commander Zixara, and she had been in charge of the spaceport before the plague hit. Like all Nexari, she had gray skin and forearms, which made her very good at operating multiple controls at once. But now, all those controls were useless. Colonel Turner, she said in accented English, I must ask again, are you certain these primitive systems will work reliably? Ben had been asked this question dozens of times by different aliens over the past few months. He tried to be patient, but sometimes it was hard. Commander, these systems have been working for humans for hundreds of years. Chemical engines, mechanical parts, basic electronics. They're simple, but they're reliable. But they're so crude, Zixara said, looking at the mechanical crane that Ben's team was installing. Our AI systems could load 1,000 ships. In the time it takes this machine to load one. Your AI systems don't work anymore, Sergeant Johnson pointed out. This machine will work tomorrow, next year, and probably for the next century. Zixara was quiet for a moment. Ben could see she was struggling with the idea that primitive technology might actually be better than what her people had built. Colonel, she said finally, would it be possible for some of my people to learn how these systems work? This was the question Ben had been hoping to hear. Of course. That's why we're here. Not just to rebuild your technology, but to teach you how to maintain it yourselves. Over the next few hours, Ben watched as proud Nexari engineers learned how to operate manual controls and mechanical systems. It was strange to see beings who had once controlled entire star systems, with their thoughts now struggling to understand simple pulleys and Levers. Dr. Amy Foster arrived at the spaceport in the afternoon. She was a specialist in adaptive technology, which meant she figured out how to make human technology work for alien biology. Every species was different, so equipment had to be modified for their specific needs. "Ben, how's the training going?" she asked, watching a group of Nexari practicing with a mechanical loading system. "Slow, but they're learning. The hardest part isn't the technology. It's getting them to accept that simple can be better than complex." Amy nodded. She had been working with alien engineers across the galaxy for months, teaching them to use human technology. "I just came from the Verdani system. They're having the same problem. Their people are used to biotechnology that grows and adapts by itself. They can't understand why anyone would build something that can't fix itself." "What did you tell them?" "That sometimes it's better to build something that doesn't break in the first place." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent beeping from Ben's radio. It was an old-fashioned radio that used simple electromagnetic waves, nothing fancy, but it worked anywhere in the galaxy. "Colonel Turner, this is Captain Morrison on the Terra's Hope. We need to talk to you immediately." Ben picked up the radio. "Go ahead, Captain. We've discovered something important about the weapon that's causing all this. We need you to prepare for a major change in operations." "What kind of change?" "We think we know who built the weapon, and they might be coming back. We need to start preparing defenses for the entire galaxy." Ben felt a chill run down his spine. "Defenses against what?" "The original builders of the weapon. We're calling them the architects. They've been sleeping somewhere in deep space, but our sensors are picking up movement in the void. Something big is heading toward inhabited space." Amy grabbed Ben's arm. "How big?" "Fleet-sized, maybe bigger. And if we're right about who they are, they're not going to be happy to find that we've survived their weapon." Ben looked around the spaceport. Human engineers were working alongside alien technicians, rebuilding. Civilization one mechanical system at a time. It had been slow work, but they were making progress. Now it seemed like they might be running out of time. "Captain, what do you need from us?" "Start organizing defense production. We need weapons, ships, and equipment that can function in the presence of their technology-killing weapon. Everything has to be built using basic human principles." "How much time do we have?" "Maybe 6 months, maybe less." The radio communication ended, and Ben stood in silence for a moment. Around him, the work continued. Nexari engineers struggled with mechanical controls, while human technicians patiently explained how everything worked. "Amy, we need to call a meeting. Every human engineer and technician in this system." "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we need to stop just rebuilding the old systems. We need to start building an army." Within hours, Ben had organized the largest engineering meeting in galactic history. Representatives from dozens of species attended, either in person or through basic radio communication. The meeting was held in a simple warehouse, lit by chemical lights and ventilated with mechanical fans. Ben stood in front of the mixed crowd of humans and aliens. "Everyone, we've just learned that the beings who created the technology-killing weapon are coming back. We need to prepare defenses for the entire galaxy." A Catherian engineer raised her crystalline hand. "Colonel Turner, what kind of defenses could possibly work against beings capable of building such a weapon?" "The same kind of defenses that have kept us alive so far," Ben replied. "Simple, reliable, and too basic for their weapon to affect." "You mean primitive weapons?" asked a Verdani representative. "I mean effective weapons. Nuclear warheads, chemical explosives, kinetic projectiles, electromagnetic pulse devices. Things that work on basic physical principles." The crowd was quiet. For a moment. These were species that had once built weapons capable of destroying stars. Now they were being asked to fight with what they considered primitive tools. Will it work? asked Commander Zixara. Ben looked out at the faces staring back at him. Humans and aliens working together, united by necessity and a common threat. 6 months ago, most of these beings had looked down on humanity as backward and primitive. Now they were depending on human knowledge to save their lives. It has to work, Ben said simply, because it's all we've got. As the meeting continued, into the night, plans were made to convert civilian manufacturing into military production. Factories that had once built starships using exotic technology would now build missiles using chemical propulsion. Assembly lines that had created artificial intelligence would now produce simple electronic systems. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were about to become students of warfare's most basic principles. And their teachers would be the species they had once considered too primitive to matter. Ben looked out through the warehouse windows at the stars above. Somewhere out there, an ancient enemy was coming. But here on the ground, humans and aliens worked together by the light of simple electric bulbs, preparing to defend their worlds with weapons that their ancestors might have recognized. It would be the most primitive war the galaxy had ever seen, and humanity would be leading it. General Patricia Hayes stood in the command center of humanity's newest military base, built on a small moon orbiting the Nexaray homeworld. The base looked nothing like the advanced military installations that other species had once built. Everything was simple and functional. Concrete buildings, metal walls, and basic electrical systems. But it worked, and that was all that mattered. General, our long-range sensors are picking up the fleet, reported Lieutenant Tom Baker from his station. They're still 6 days out, but we're getting a clear picture now. Patricia walked over to look at the data. What she saw made her stomach turn cold. The approaching fleet was massive. Hundreds of ships, each one the size of a small moon. The ships had the same dark, light-absorbing material that Dr. Kevin Thompson had found in the ancient structures. How many ships total? She asked. Our best count is 347 major vessels, plus thousands of smaller craft. Tom replied, General, this fleet is bigger than all the combined navies of the galaxy before the plague hit. Dr. Kevin Thompson looked up from his research station in the corner of the room. Kevin was an archaeologist who had spent the last 6 months studying everything they could learn about the mysterious architects. His work had given them their only clues about what they were facing. General, I've finished translating the last of the ancient records we found, Kevin said, walking over with a thick folder of papers. I think I understand what we're dealing with now. Tell me, the architects aren't just an ancient civilization. They're the ancient civilization. They've been around for over 10 million years. Every few million years, they send out their weapon to destroy any species that gets too advanced. Patricia frowned. Why would they do that? Because they believe that only one species should have truly advanced technology, them. Everyone else should stay at a primitive level. They see themselves as gardeners, and the rest of us as weeds that need to be cut down periodically. Lieutenant. Sarah Mitchell entered the command center, still wearing her pilot's flight suit. She had just returned from another scouting mission to monitor the approaching fleet. General, I got close enough to see details on their ships, she reported. They're definitely using the same technology that created the plague. My sensors couldn't detect them at all, but I could see them with basic optical equipment. Any sign that they know we're here? Patricia asked. I don't think so. My ship is too primitive for their sensors to notice. To them, I probably look like a piece of space debris. Dr. Thompson nodded. That matches what I found in the records. The architects built their weapon to target anything that uses exotic physics. They assumed that any civilization advanced enough to be a threat would be using energy manipulation, quantum fields, and space-time technology. But they didn't plan for us, Patricia said. Exactly. We're the first species they've encountered. That became spacefaring while still using basic physics. To them, we should be impossible. The command center's communication system crackled to life. General Hayes, this is Captain Morrison on the Terra's Hope. We're receiving a transmission from the approaching fleet. Put it through to the main screen. The screen flickered and then showed a face that made everyone in the room go silent. The being on the screen was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to be made of pure energy. Its eyes glowed with white light, and when it spoke, its voice sounded like music played through crystal. "Greetings, primitive inhabitants of this galaxy," the being said in perfect English, though Patricia suspected it was speaking to all species simultaneously in their own languages. "I am Primary Architect Zephon. We have returned to find our garden in an unexpected state." The being paused, and Patricia could see confusion in its glowing eyes. "Our cleansing weapon was deployed as planned, yet we detect continued technological activity throughout this galaxy. This should not be possible. All advanced civilizations should have been reduced to primitive levels." General Hayes stepped forward. "This is General Patricia Hayes of the Human Defense Force. Who are you, and what do you want?" The architect's expression changed to what might have been surprise. "Human Defense Force? We have no record of a species called humans in our archives. You should not exist." "Well, we do exist, and we're not going anywhere." "Impossible. Our weapon destroys all technology based on exotic physics. Any species capable of space travel should have been eliminated. Your weapon only affects advanced technology," Patricia said calmly. "Our technology is too simple for your weapon to recognize." The architect was quiet for a moment, and Patricia could see it thinking. When it spoke again, its voice had changed from confusion to anger. "You speak of simple technology, yet you travel between stars. You communicate across vast distances. This cannot be achieved with primitive methods." "Watch us," Patricia replied. But communication ended, and the command center was silent for a moment. "Well," Sarah said finally, "I don't think they're happy to see us." Dr. Thompson was looking through his research papers frantically. "General, there's something else in the records. Something I didn't understand before." "What?" The architects don't just use advanced technology. They are advanced technology. Their bodies, their ships, their weapons, everything about them is based on pure energy manipulation. They gave up physical matter millions of years ago." Patricia felt a cold realization hit her. Which means they're vulnerable to the same thing their weapon targets, except in reverse. Kevin looked up from his papers, excitement in his eyes. Their technology can't defend against purely physical attacks because they've forgotten that physical matter even exists. "Are you saying that our primitive weapons might actually work against them?" "Better than work. They might be completely defenseless against them." Lieutenant Baker spoke up from his station. "General, we're getting reports from human fleets across the galaxy. The architect ships are moving toward major population centers. Earth, the Nexarai homeworld, Tetherian space, everywhere." Patricia walked to the front window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the most advanced beings in the galaxy were coming to destroy everything she cared about. They had technology that was millions of years ahead of anything humans had ever built, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity before. "Send a message to all human ships and installations," she ordered. "Tell them the architects are coming, but they're not invincible. Our weapons can hurt them, and they can't defend against us." "What about our alien allies?" Sarah asked. "Tell them to stay back and let us handle this. This is a job for primitive technology." As the command center bustled with activity, Patricia thought about how much the galaxy had changed in the past year. Humanity had gone from being the newest and least advanced species to being the only thing standing between billions of beings and complete destruction. The architects had designed their weapon to destroy advanced civilizations and keep the galaxy primitive. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had forgotten that sometimes the most primitive approach was also the most effective dot in a few days. The galaxy would learn whether 10 million years of technological advancement could stand up to the simple, stubborn effectiveness of human engineering. Patricia smiled grimly as she watched her people prepare for war. The architects were about to learn that the best way to fight gods was with rocks and sticks. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra's Hope, watching as the largest fleet in human history prepared for battle. 300 human ships hung in space around Earth, their simple metal hulls reflecting the light from humanity's home star. They looked tiny compared to the massive dark ships of the architect fleet approaching from deep space, but Jake knew that size wasn't everything. "Admiral, all ships report ready for battle," reported Commander Alex Rodriguez from his tactical station. "Nuclear warheads are armed, kinetic weapons are loaded, and all ships are maintaining radio silence until your signal." Jake nodded. The battle plan was simple, which was exactly how he liked it. No complex maneuvers, no exotic weapons, just straightforward human tactics using reliable human technology. "How long until the architects reach Earth?" Jake asked. 30 minutes, sir," replied Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell from her pilot station. "Their lead ships are already entering the outer solar system." Dr. Lisa Kane looked up from her science station. "Jake, we're getting energy readings from their fleet that are off the charts. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be big." Through the front window, Jake could see the first architect ships appearing as dark spots against the stars. They were enormous, each one easily 10 times larger than the biggest human ship. Their surfaces seemed to absorb light, making them look like holes cut in space itself. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the architect fleet," the communication officer announced. "Put it on screen." Primary architect Zephon appeared on the main display, his energy-based form glowing with white light. Behind him, Jake could see the interior of an architect ship. Walls that seemed to be made of pure light and controls that existed as floating energy patterns. "Admiral Morrison," the architect said, his voice filled with arrogance, "we offer you one final chance to surrender. Abandon your primitive vessels and accept return to a proper primitive state. We will allow your species to exist, but only at the technological level we deem appropriate." Jake stepped forward. "And if we refuse? Then you will be eliminated, just as countless other species have been eliminated over the past 10 million years. Your crude weapons cannot harm us, and your simple minds cannot comprehend our power. You know what?" Jake said calmly. "I think you're wrong about that." The communication ended, and Zephon's glowing face disappeared from the screen. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison." Jake spoke into his radio. "The architects think we're too primitive to fight them. Let's show them how wrong they are. Execute attack plan Alpha." Across the human fleet, nuclear missiles launched from their simple chemical-powered tubes. The missiles were basic by galactic standards, just metal tubes filled with nuclear material and guided by simple electronic systems. But they worked, and there were hundreds of them. The architect ships responded immediately. Beams of pure energy lanced out from their dark hulls, trying to destroy the incoming missiles. But something strange happened. The energy beams passed right through the missiles without affecting them. "Their weapons can't lock onto our missiles," Dr. Kane reported, excitement in her voice. "The missiles are too simple for their targeting systems to recognize as threats." The first nuclear warheads reached the architect ships and exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Jake watched in amazement as the massive dark ships shuddered under the impacts. Sections of their energy-based hulls flickered and went dark. "Direct hits on 12 enemy vessels," Alex reported. "They're showing damage. But the architects weren't helpless. Their ships began firing massive energy pulses that could destroy entire moons. The human fleet scattered, using their simple chemical engines to dodge the incoming attacks. "Sarah, take us in closer," Jake ordered. "Let's see how they handle kinetic weapons." The Terra's Hope accelerated toward the architect fleet, along with 50 other human ships. They fired streams of metal projectiles, simple chunks of steel accelerated to high speeds by chemical explosives. The projectiles were crude, but they were fast, and there were thousands of them. The architect ships tried to defend themselves with energy shields, but the shields were designed to stop exotic energy weapons, not simple physical matter. The metal projectiles punched right through the energy barriers and slammed into the dark hulls. "Impossible." Zephon's voice crackled over the radio. "How can primitive matter weapons penetrate our defenses?" "Because you forgot something important," Jake replied, steering his ship between two massive architect vessels. "Physical laws still work, no matter how advanced you think you are." The battle continued for hours. Human ships darted between the massive architect vessels like tiny fish around whales. They used their simple, reliable weapons to chip away at the energy-based ships piece by piece. But the most important part of the battle wasn't happening in space. Down on Earth and across the galaxy, human engineers worked frantically to keep communication systems running. Simple radio waves carried news of the battle to every inhabited world. "Admiral, we're getting reports from across the galaxy," the communication officer announced. "Human fleets are engaging architect forces everywhere. The aliens are watching and cheering us on." Jake smiled. That was the real victory. For the first time in galactic history, every species in known space was united behind a common cause. And they were united behind humanity. The turning point came when Sarah Mitchell piloted her small scout ship directly into the command center of Zephon's flagship. Her ship's basic explosive charges weren't powerful, but they were enough to disrupt the energy patterns that kept the architect's body stable. "Admiral, the enemy flagship is losing cohesion," Dr. Kane reported. "I think their leader is dying." On the main screen, they could see Zephon's glowing form flickering like a candle in the wind. When he spoke, his voice was weak and confused. "This cannot be happening," he whispered. "We are perfect. We are advanced. How can primitive beings defeat us?" "Because being advanced isn't the same as being right," Jake replied. "And being simple isn't the same as being weak." One by one, the architect ships began to retreat. Their energy-based forms were no match for humanity's stubborn physical weapons. The beings who had controlled the galaxy for 10 million years were fleeing from the species they had thought was too primitive to matter. But Jake wasn't finished. "This is Admiral Morrison to all architect vessels. I'm offering you a choice. You can keep running and hide in the dark corners of space, or you can stay and learn." "Learn what?" Zephon asked weakly. "Learn that advancement doesn't mean abandoning everything that came before. Learn that physical matter isn't something to be ashamed of. Learn that the best technology is the kind that works when you need it most." The remaining architect ships stopped retreating. Slowly, carefully, they approached the human fleet. "You would teach us?" Zephon asked. "After we tried to destroy you?" "That's what humans do," Jake said simply. "We help people who need help." 5 years later, Jake stood in the same spot on the Terra's Hope's bridge, but everything had changed. Through the front window, he could see ships from every species in the galaxy working together. Cytherian crystal ships flew alongside Nexari metal vessels. Verdani bioships shared space with human chemical rockets. But most importantly, every ship in the fleet had at least some human technology aboard. Simple backup systems, reliable mechanical parts, basic electronic components. The galaxy had learned that the most advanced technology was worthless if it couldn't be counted on in the center of the fleet, flew a new kind of ship. Vessels built by reformed architects working with human engineers. These ships combined the best of both approaches. Advanced energy manipulation built on a foundation of solid physical engineering. Jake's daughter Emily played with a simple flashlight on the bridge, clicking it on and off. The little LED light was nothing special, just basic electricity flowing through a simple circuit. But to Jake, it represented everything humanity had accomplished. They had become the galaxy's flashlight, shining light into the darkness whenever it was needed. And that light would never go out, because it was built on principles that would work as long as the universe existed. "Dad, why do you always keep that old flashlight on your desk?" Emily asked, pointing to the worn metal device that Jake had carried through the entire war. Jake picked up the flashlight and clicked it on. Its beam cut through the bridge lighting, steady and reliable. "Because, sweetheart, no matter how far we advance or how smart we become, sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. And it's important to remember that." Emily nodded seriously, then went back to playing with her own little light. Outside, the stars shone down on a galaxy that was safer, stronger, and more united than it had ever been. And at the heart of it all, humanity's simple light continued to shine, guiding everyone toward a better future.